Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for being with us this evening. We're going to get our legislative meeting underway. At this time, can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Ms. Evans, can you do the roll call, please?
Ms. Evans.
Present.
Mr. Henderson.
Present.
Ms. Ionetti.
Present.
Mr. Kessler.
Present.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Present.
Mrs. Sherpier.
Present.
Mr. Sirota.
Present.
Mr. Wallach. Dr. Davis.
Present.
All present, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I want to welcome everyone to our last legislative meeting of the 21-22 school year. This year has certainly had its share of challenges. When I think back to starting the year with a tornado, and then we had the luxury of having a beautiful evening for graduation. So, talk about, the two ends of the spectrum. But we're here, and we have a pretty full agenda this evening, so we're going to definitely follow it as it is listed. We do not have a Student Government Association report this evening, and we look forward to the students joining us again at the beginning of our next school year. Dr. Yanni, can you please give us your superintendent's report?
Thank you, Dr. Davis. So as Dr. Davis said, we had a great graduation ceremony last week. 336 students entered. I say the seniors entered Cardinal Stadium and they left as graduates. Luke Price, the senior class president, addressed his peers, as did Joyce Jung, our student board rep, and Lauren Howie. Our student celebration also included honoring two of our retirees, Kim Callahan, Dr. Kim Callahan, and Miss Dee Cross, and they both received honorary diplomas. We do extend our gratitude to everyone who helped plan graduation. It was a great night. There are a number of personnel items tonight on the agenda. One is the hiring of our finalists for the assistant principal position at the high school. After a long process, we're recommending Ashley Martonic to serve as the assistant principal in the position vacated by Dr. Kim Callahan. She has experience as a supervisor of special education and an assistant principal both here in Pennsylvania and in Florida. Prior to becoming an administrator, she was a special education teacher, and she's highly qualified in the area of English language arts. She holds a master's degree in secondary education, and we look forward to officially welcoming her in July and then having our Upper Dublin students and families meet her shortly thereafter. There are 3 retirees tonight on the personnel agenda. Matt Toner, our supervisor of operations, John Traley, high school math teacher, and Jen Walker-Good, a middle school math teacher. All 3 employees will be missed, and there's many years of experience. So we thank them for their years of dedicated service, and we wish them all the best as they go off into retirement. Also on the agenda tonight is the contract with the Upper Dublin Education Support Professionals Association, also known as UDSD. The current contract expires on June 30th, so over the last few months, members of the board and administration and UDSD bargained a new contract. The new contract that the board will consider approval tonight is a 5-year contract. It'll run July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2027. Included in my superintendent's report that will go out publicly and included in our legislative briefs will be a highlight section. So one of the things that was important as we negotiated this contract was to make sure that we differentiated increases, particularly for 2 employee groups. One was our staff nurses, and the other employee group were our educational assistants. Both of those employee groups, we needed to make sure that their hourly wages increased a little bit. So when the information is shared, you'll see we did just that. Beyond the financial package of the contract, there are no other material changes. So we're excited to have that contract on the agenda tonight. There are 3 future planning documents on the agenda. The first is the health and safety plan. You will see that the health and safety plan has been revised to align completely to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC. The only thing that we are going to follow Montgomery County Office of Public Health for moving forward are their isolation and quarantine requirements. Our Office of Public Health wrote COVID-19 into their health code, and so we are required to follow their isolation and quarantine requirements. Our special education plan that we need to submit every 3 years is on the agenda. As you read it, it's largely a compliance document. It deals a lot with caseloads, where we're physically educating students in the buildings. And one of the things that I'm excited about is to see what our new Director of Student Services will do next year. She is very interested in having much more parent and guardian input into the special education process. So when Dr. Blankman joins us in a couple of weeks, we'll be excited to hear what she's going to do. And the district's comprehensive plan outlines our goals for the next couple of years. The motion on the agenda this evening is to put the plan on public display. It'll be on display all summer, and we'll be taking feedback throughout the summer and into the fall. The comprehensive plan, again, is largely a compliance document required by the Department of Education. Finally, please remember that registration remains open and ongoing. When we welcome our kindergartners in the fall, we will be welcoming the class of 2035. And with that, I wish everyone a great summer.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. At this time, we are up to public participation. This is our first opportunity for community input, and this opportunity is for action items and presentations included on this agenda only. I did receive an email from a community member about people speaking on some other issues, and those will be taken during the second opportunity for community input. But right now, if anyone has any thing they would like to say, please come to the mic, state your name and where you reside in the township. Oh, look
Hi,
who it
Ginny
is.
Vitella, Ambler. I know, it's a busy
just,
spring.
And just so everyone knows, Ms. Evans will monitor the 4-minute time frame.
It won't take 4 minutes. I just want to say that I know we're voting on the tax increase, and it looks like, even though I missed the meeting, that we've moved from a 2.3 to a 2.0. At least the majority of the people on the board believed that that was the case. I want to reiterate the need for a reduced increase. I believe each 1% is close to $850,000, and Andy will correct me on my number. I know we spent a lot of time talking about the rebate program, which people need and get, and that's great, and that's a great program, but it only helps 200 households out of, let's say, 9,000 in the Upper Dublin community. And the lower the tax increase, it benefits all people in Upper Dublin, because there's a lot of people that don't fit into those numbers for the rebate, but in this economy, with gas prices so high, food expensive, shelves empty, and having to pay a premium for things that aren't getting here, it is really important to think about our residents, that really everybody would benefit from having a lower tax increase. And with a $111 million budget, I just can't believe that 800 is something we can't find. So I encourage consideration of decreasing the increase continuously. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one approaching the mic, I will close this first opportunity for community input. Dr. Yanni, would you like to respond regarding the tax increase?
Mr. Leckman, I believe the number 850,000 is incorrect. Can you?
It's 85,000 per every tenth of a percent, so a percent would be
Correct,
850,000
thank you.
approximately.
Okay, any other comments? I think when we will probably have more conversation when we get to that agenda item from the board. Mr. Leckman, do you have any other announcements or communications?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we have our minutes from the May 16th, 2022 legislative meeting. They need to be approved this evening. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you. I have a first. Is there a second? Okay, thank you. All those in favor of approving our minutes of the May 16th, 2022 legislative meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you. Also, as a information item, we have our committee minutes. They were moved and approved by the committees to be included on our agenda as an information item only. They were the committee meeting minutes from May 4th, the Education Committee, May 4th, the Policy Committee, and May 10th, the Finance Committee. All those were moved and approved by the committees. Ms. Sherpier, the Education Committee curriculum recommendations.
Yes, thank you. The first item is just for information only. That is our enrollment numbers, and that was for the month of June. And then the second item is a conference for the National Superintendents Forum, and I'd like to make a motion to approve that item.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Ioannidis.
And yeah, I think the only comment on there is that that's just travel, right? That's not for the attendance, because I assume you're a speaker.
Correct, so it's just reimbursement for travel.
We'd like to congratulate Dr. Yanni for being selected to present at a national conference. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And we'll look forward to hearing all about that conference when you get back. Ms. Sherpier.
Yeah, and then for item 10, we have a bunch of items. I'd like to highlight exchange students. We haven't seen those for a number of years, and being the host of having hosted a number of exchange students in the past, I'm really excited and very grateful for the host family to bring that opportunity to the district again. So that is one item. I'd like to take that separately, if that's okay. So I'd like to approve an exchange student for the 22-23 school year.
Okay, we have a motion on the exchange student, A. Is there a second to that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
And then we have items B through H. All of them were discussed in committee, so I'd like to make a motion to pass all of them, or to approve all of them in one set.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve B through H. Is there a second to that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? They were all discussed at the committee level. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Mr. Sirota, Finance Committee recommendations.
Thank you. We have 23 items under finance tonight. We have a typical June-long list. I will break them into groups, some, so you don't have to have me read all of these together. Some of them require roll call votes and some just to highlight. So first up, item A is our 22-23 final budget and the associated resolutions that go with that. So I would like to make a motion to approve it as written. It does include, as mentioned earlier, a tax increase of 2%.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor for the final budget and funding resolutions. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Any comments or questions on that motion? Mr. Kessler.
So during the Finance Committee meeting, I raised concerns about a 2% tax increase as opposed to 2.3. And for the benefit of the group, I wanted to go through that again. This, regardless of whether it's 2% or 2.3%, this property tax increase would again be below the Act 1 index. That's 6 years in a row that we would find ourselves in that position. The budget at 2.3% was a balanced budget, which was a considerable achievement for the administration and one that I know that they spent a lot of hours and time working on. It would also allow us at a 2.3% increase to deposit approximately $840,000 into our capital account. And while I mentioned this at our Finance Committee meeting, that I'm not much of a personal saver, I do believe that this is something that we really need as a board to keep our eye on. We have a significant amount of money that's going to have to be devoted to capital projects in the coming years. And while we have the opportunity to deposit this additional amount of money into the fund, I think that is something that we need to strongly consider as a group. We have 2 elementary schools that are going to need a significant investment of capital given their age and their condition. And while I am certainly aware of the concerns that the community has with regards to our economic situation, our economy has changed significantly in the last 4 months. And from what I read, that is not changing for the better as we look onto the horizon. So while everyone is paying more for food and gas and energy and other assorted costs, we too as a school district will be required to shoulder that burden as well. So I really think that in looking at where we are and where we are going and the current state of the economy, I think that while we have the opportunity to make this investment in the schools, we need to do that. And I think we all need to consider whether or not we should go back to the 2.3% tax increase so that we can deposit an amount of money that is not only responsible for today, but keeps an eye on our future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Sirota.
I want to also reiterate what Andy is saying about making a transfer to capital reserve, as I said at the finance meeting, and I'll reiterate it here. I think it's really critically important that we plan to make a transfer to the capital reserve every single year. In future years, I hope to build that in as part of budget assumptions, that we make an appropriate transfer every year. And I think that transfer every year ought to be more than $840,000 at the current, at current scale. And, increasing over time as everything increases over time. So $840,000 transfer to me is, we need to be doing a transfer, and $840,000 isn't enough for 1 year, but this is a transfer we're talking about. We have made significant transfers over the last few years, and the difference between the $840-ish thousand at 2.3 and the, I don't have the number in front of me, but the slightly smaller number that we're talking about at 2.0 still allows us a balanced budget. Neither of them are enough. I don't think it's a material difference. I just think we need to get into the habit. I don't know if that's really the right word, but we really need to be doing that every single year. And So I'm comfortable, I mean, to me, 2.3 and 2.0 are really close together. Those numbers are, there's not a really significant difference. Either way, even 2.3 would have to be considered a low tax increase by any reasonable standard. I think it's way below the Act 1 index this year. It's way below the mean and the median for the 15 districts in southeastern Montgomery County. 2.3 would be sixth lowest, and 2.0 would be fifth lowest of the 15 districts in southeastern Montgomery County. And in relation to the index, it's by far the lowest increase we've had in the Act 1 era. So I think by any reasonable standard, even 2.3 is a small tax increase, but obviously 2.0 is lower. So I'm comfortable with either of those numbers, and I said that last week, and you know, assuming we land somewhere in that range, I'll be going with the majority.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Just to remind my colleagues that we've already transferred $3.7 million into capital reserve this year. Also, when we look at our budgeting for this year, we're looking at budget to budget. We don't look at the actual, where the year ended up, until the audit is completed, or maybe we'll get a better estimate in terms of where the actual is based on, based on when we close out this fiscal year, which doesn't occur until at least September, because we're paying bills, we're paying salaries for the next few months. Last month in our additional report that Mr. Leckman provides, we had a fund balance of over $4 million in that report. That's the actual, that money we still have left. We're making a motion tonight based on the final audit results to move additional money to capital reserve and assessment appeals.
The motion before the board tonight is to move money to the committed fund balance for real estate assessments.
Real assessment appeal, okay. And then, so there will be, can we, based on the final numbers, can we move additional money to capital reserve?
So there are three motions before the board tonight. One is to commit an additional $1 million for real estate assessments, right, for the uncertainty in the commercial market. The two additional ones are to allow for when we complete our audit before December 31st, 2022 for additional capital reserve transfer or additional commitments in general fund balance.
Right. Yep. And then, so I strongly would support the 2%. I don't think we need to do 2.3. I think 4 or 5 years ago, Mark, I think we actually had a 1.99 tax increase. If you look at that document.
That's right, but relative to, I said relative to the index, this is by far the
Oh, yeah.
lowest.
The index is much different. And also, when we talk about a 2% increase, for the typical homeowner, you have to remember that there's a significant increase in the homestead reduction this year, $69 increase. So whatever your 2% tax increase is going to be, there's another $69 reduction to that tax increase. Correct. Okay. And that's, that is very good news when we're taxing at 2%. The median homes assessed value, the tax increase will be under $100 this year because of the homestead reduction. So, and I think we need to take advantage of that this year because everybody is hurting with food, gas, et cetera. But I really think the administration did tell us at the finance meeting that they were comfortable with 2 or 2.3%. So I think we really should do the 2%. And I think the community, the homeowners will see when you calculate what your tax bill is finally going to be, it will be less than 2% because of that homestead credit.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to respond, just a brief response to that.
I want to give everybody one chance, and then you can all come back around. Ms. Sherpier?
Yeah, so at the finance meeting at the beginning, I was very much where, at the 2.3, I think based on the information we were given, I'm comfortable still with the 2.0. I do think that a further drop is not responsible, given the uncertainties that we all are facing, and as a district in cost, and especially with respect to the GISA project that's ongoing at Fort Washington. The cost of that is very dependent on where the market is. So I'm sticking with my 2.0.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
I'm echoing the assessment that comfort with 2.0, given the fact that we are going through a high inflationary period. Obviously, there needs to be some adjustment to account for the increased cost of energy, the increased cost of basic supplies and whatnot. But at the same time, since we have a lot of neighbors who are challenged because of COVID, because of the tornado, and definitely coming in well below the Act 1 index, I believe, is appropriate in the given environment. So I'm also supportive of the 2.0.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Wallach?
I, too, am supportive of the 2.0. I advocated that at the finance meeting, and I'm staying there. I completely respect Mr. Kessler's comments, especially with regard to funding the capital reserve on a going forward basis, as Mr. Sirota also said, but I'm comfortable at 2, and I stay there.
And Ms. Ionetti?
Okay, as I said in the finance meeting, I'm comfortable with the range in 2 to 2.3%. I trust the administration that they feel like we have enough money going into that capital fund so that we can fund those projects that we need to get done. So I would have been okay with 2.3, but 2% is good for our homeowners, so.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
Since we're all doing this.
You don't have to.
Well, I'm going to just echo what I said at the finance meeting, just, for the record, which is I am going to vote in favor of the 2%. However, I do very strongly support what Mr. Kessler said. We had the same conversation. I'm a saver. And we have incurred significant, or are going to incur significant expense associated with tornado damage that was not covered by insurance. So I am very mindful of the capital reserve balance, and additionally, we have other projects that are coming up in the next several years. So I'm going to kind of keep an eye on where things go this year, particularly with assessments from new development. But the capital reserve is something that is front of mind for me, for sure. That being said, I am comfortable at the 2%. The administration is comfortable at the 2%, so I'm going to support that.
Thank you. Mr. Sirota, you wanted to make a comment on something that was said.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want, Art mentioned the homestead reduction, or the increase in the reduction from homesteads of $69 this year, and that's really important to acknowledge. But it's also not something that I feel we should be making decisions based on. That is pass-through money. The money comes from the state, passes through our budget, directly through our budget. We don't get to touch it, and it passes right back out to the homeowners. So the homeowners certainly feel it in the tax bill. It shows up as a line on the tax bill. But I don't think that's anything that, we have no influence on it in any direction. It shouldn't factor into our decision-making, in my opinion. If it did factor into our decision, I don't think it should, but if it did factor into our decision-making, I think it actually argues for a higher tax increase, because next year, so this year, it went up because the state is fully funding it using federal stimulus money. And we don't know that fully funding is going to continue. If it reverts back to the previous level, then effectively homeowners are going to see another increase next year to make up for the decrease this year. And it would be nice to have a little additional buffer to be able to cover that if we were making decisions based on homestead money. But I think we shouldn't be making decisions. So I want to acknowledge that it exists, but I don't think we make any decisions based on it. Thank you. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Just before we do a roll call vote, I'll just, reiterate what I said as well at the Finance Committee meeting. I am supporting the 2.0. I agree with really everything that was said. I think we're on the same page in terms of recognizing how important it is for us to make sure we're setting aside money for our capital projects. I do believe that we've been doing a good job of that. I think we are all very cognizant of the need to do that and to continue to do that. I also know that there is still a lot of development that's going on in our township, and so more funding will be coming in. And hopefully, as that comes in, we'll be able to truly be strategic about setting aside some of that for some of the capital projects that are certainly coming our way. So I will be supporting the 2.0 tax increase as well. Any other final comments? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Evans, can you do a roll call vote?
Clarify what we're voting on.
We are voting on A, the 2022-23 final budget and funding resolutions. If you look on your agenda, those resolutions include, the funding resolutions include adopt the real estate tax resolution, adopting the real estate transfer tax resolution, and adopting the earned income tax resolution. And that is with the increase of 2% versus the 2.3. So we are voting on the 2% increase. Any other clarifications? Okay, roll call vote.
When I call your name, just say yes or no. Ms. Evans,
Yes.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Ms. Ionetti,
Yes.
Mr. Kessler,
No.
Dr. Levinowitz, Mrs. Sherpier,
Yes.
Mr. Sirota,
Yes.
Mr. Wallach,
Yes.
Dr. Davis.
Yes.
That's 1 no and 8 yeses.
Thank you. Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. Moving on, I'm going to take item B by itself too, just because I think it deserves to be highlighted. It was discussed in great detail last week at the Finance Committee meeting, but I would like to make a motion to approve an agreement with CMTA to complete the Giza project as we've discussed for Fort Washington Elementary School, which includes this is a project to not for the part of the building that is covered by insurance, but to update the rest of the building to match effectively what will end up in the insurance-covered portion, so that we effectively have one fully renovated school when it's all done.
Okay, so Mr. Sirota has made a motion to approve the Giza project. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
All right, next I'm going to take as a group items 11C through 11K. All of these were discussed in detail at the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay, there's a motion to approve C through K. Is there a second to the motion?
Second?
Mr. Henderson, thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Next up, item 11L, I'm going to take separately because this one also should get a roll call vote. This is, so I'd like to make a motion to commit an additional $1 million of fund balance for real estate assessment appeals, bringing that total commitment up to $2.5 million.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to commit the fund balance of 1 million for real estate assessment appeals. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I just want to clarify, when you just read the statement, in L, it sounds like we're committing the fund balance, but we're not committing the fund balance. So the motion should be very, very clearly stated that we are committing $1 million from the fund balance.
So I think, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, what we're actually doing is we're changing the commitment from the existing commitment of 1.5 million to 2.5
Correct.
million. So we are committing 2.5 million of fund balance, and that represents an increase of $1 million more than we currently have committed.
Right. That's correct, yes. We're committing $2.5 million. It's an increase of $1 million.
Right, okay.
Any other comments or questions? You're grabbing the mic. All right. All those in favor, please, oh, is there a second? Oh, roll call, that's right.
There was a second, thank you. When I call your name, indicate yes or no. For 11L. Ms. Evans.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Ms. Ionetti.
Yes.
Mr. Kessler.
Yes.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherpier.
Yes.
Mr. Sirota.
Yes.
Mr. Wallach.
Yes.
Dr. Davis.
Yes.
9 yeses, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Mr.
All
Surratt.
right, and to wrap it up, I would like to make a motion to approve items 11M through 11W. All of these were also discussed in detail last week at the Finance Committee meeting, except for that last one, 11W, which is our regular monthly payments. We do not need to do roll calls on M or N. I know we discussed that earlier, but we do not.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve M through W. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sharpier. Any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you. We are up to our personnel report. Dr. Levinowitz.
I will break up the personnel report a bit tonight. Let me put together the personnel report, which is item A, and item E, which is the hiring authorization that we do every year at this time. That provides the administration with authorization to hire if there's a board meeting in the month of July. So I'd like to make a motion to approve items A and E.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve A and E under the personnel report. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sirota. Are there any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right. Continuing on with,
Okay, let's move on to B. It's not often that I get to announce this. This motion is to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the Board of School Directors and the Upper Dublin Education Support Professionals Association, UDSD, for the period of July 1, 2022 through July 30th, 2027. And I'd like to thank all involved with the negotiations that we were able to reach an agreement that I believe is fair to both sides before the end of the school year.
okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor for the UDSD collective bargaining agreement approval. Is there a second to the motion?
Can I just make a comment first?
Well,
that
we
it
need
was-
a second first, and then we can
But
have
the
comment.
motion was read incorrectly. It was June 30th, not July of 2027.
July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2027.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, just so it's clear, the dates for the period is July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2027. Dr. Levinowitz put a motion on the floor, and Mr. Sirota has moved it forward for the second. Are there any other comments or questions on the motion that's on the floor? Okay, seeing none. All those that are in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes, Dr. Davis, I abstain in order to avoid the appearance of impropriety, as my wife is a educational assistant at one of our schools.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Levinowitz, back to you.
Moving on to item C, which is the approve the attached employee compensation plans for the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
I'll second that one.
And this, okay, got the dates right that time, okay. It's been moved and we've had a second. Are there any comments or questions on the motion?
This is just, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, this is 6 groups that are not represented by UDSD.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Dr. Davis, I'll be abstaining from this vote. My husband is employed by the district as a cafeteria and playground aide and is therefore covered by one of these plans.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Levinowitz.
Okay, moving on to last item for tonight, the administrative salary increases. It's recommended that the Board of School Directors approve salary increases for members of the Act 93 leadership team, the Chief Financial Officer, the Director of Human Services, and the Superintendent in the amount of $139,919, which represents a 2.87 increase for the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Okay, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sirota, thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. Ms. Ioniti, Policy Committee recommendations.
Okay, we have some second readings tonight, and they have been through policy twice. And they've been here before, so we've discussed them at length. So I make a motion to pass item 13A.
Okay, we have a motion to approve 13A. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wallach. Any comments or questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And finally, other business, Mr. Wallach.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We have 6 items of other business tonight. I'm going to break them up into 2 motions because 3 of them Dr. Yanni referenced tonight and 3 of them have not really been addressed tonight. So first I'm going to make a motion for items A, B, and C, which are the 3 planning documents Dr. Yanni mentioned. Just to clarify, A is to approve the revised health and safety plan to reflect adherence to the CDC's recommendations. B is to authorize the superintendent to submit the special education plan to PDE. And C is to authorize the superintendent to place the district's comprehensive plan on public display. I so move.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. We have the motion on the floor to approve A, B, and C. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Great, thank you.
Dr. Davis, I'm going to move now to items D, E, and F, and I'm briefly just going to go through them so the community and the board is aware. Item D is to approve the adoption of policies, procedures, and use of funds for the MCIU, the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, which the school district participates in. Item E is a motion to reappoint Jennifer Baldessano as the board treasurer for a one-year term beginning July 1st, 2022. Ms. Baldessano is currently the board treasurer, so it's a reappointment for her. And item F is to appoint Dr. Davis and Ms. Evans as our voting delegates for the 2022 Pennsylvania School Boards Association's Delegate Assembly. We thank them for volunteering for that service and look forward to them participating and reporting back to us. So I so move items D, E, and F.
Okay, we have D through F as a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, Mr. Sirota, thank you. Any questions or comments? Or anybody else want to volunteer to be a delegate? No. Any questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? The delegates, no. Okay, thank you. Okay, included as an information item are always the liaison committee reports as an information item only. And Mr. Diazio, is there a solicitor's report?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Davis. I have the Sunshine Act announcement for this evening. The board met in executive session beginning at 5:45 today prior to tonight's public meeting to discuss matters of personnel, which were on the agenda this evening, future staffing, and the status of personnel investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're up to our second opportunity for public participation. This opportunity for community input is for any topic. Again, please come to the mic, state your name and where you reside in the district, in the township. Again, Ms. Evans will be our timekeeper and monitor the 4-minute time frame that is allotted for comments.
Hello, I'm Stacy Blum. I live in Drescher. I am here with my husband, Chad, and one of my sons, Austin. And I am here to express my extreme disappointment in the administration's decision to reorganize the music department throughout the district without any real thought or consideration on the impact it will have on the students. We have 2 boys, upcoming 11th and 8th graders, who are very active in the music programs and were heartbroken and confused to hear that Mr. Kennedy would not be teaching at Sandy Run anymore. Mr. Kennedy has played a significant role in keeping my children thoroughly engaged in their music studies when there are so many other options presented to them when they are starting at Sandy Run. We all know middle school children are a different breed, and they need all the encouragement to stick with something they enjoy, even if it's not considered the popular thing. We've all been there, and we all know middle school is rough, and the social pressures can easily take a child away from something they're interested in just because another student said it wasn't cool. Mr. Kennedy deserves a medal and all the accolades for his passion, enthusiasm, love, knowledge about music, and his ability to assure 11 to 14-year-old children that music is cool and fun. But instead, the district is moving him out of this pivotal role, which will leave many children who are learning to navigate the middle school life without the musical mentorship that he has perfected for 25 years in Upper Dublin. For 25 years. The music program at Upper Dublin High School is widely known as an excellent program, but without Mr. Kennedy's superb teaching techniques, guidance, and encouragement of middle school students to continue to pursue their love of music, the high school would not have the music program it is known for. Furthermore, I remember my boys receiving small group music instruction in elementary school, and my oldest from Mr. Kennedy at Sandy Run, but those lessons have completely stopped. It is my understanding that those times have been replaced in part to allow Mr. Kennedy to provide sub-coverage. This is just absurd on so many levels, but most of all, the negative impact it has on our students' music education. First, small group music lessons are just as important as reading, math, social skills intervention classes. These small group or private lessons with Mr. Kennedy allow the students to perfect their playing, build confidence, and collaborate with peers on a smaller level. Families are now hearing, "I'm sorry, we're not doing lessons anymore because I have to cover classes." Second, equity. Isn't that what we're all supposed to be striving for? As I just mentioned, small group and/or private lessons are an integral part of a child learning to play an instrument. Sadly, the administration hasn't thought about the students in our district who do not have the means to pay for private lessons. Many students were relying on in-school lessons, but those opportunities are now non-existent, and the only students receiving lessons are the ones who can afford to pay for them. This is the definition of inequity. This is unacceptable, and the district is moving us further and further away from the equity by the way it has haphazardly reorganized the music department. As a special education teacher in a neighboring school district, I'm aware how school districts are reorganizing, shuffling teachers, and not rehiring to fill retired positions, and the difficulty in finding subs, paras, bus drivers, etc. However, the districts are making staffing decisions without the input from the teachers, the ones who know the ins and outs of the schools and know what the students need better than anyone else. As a teacher and a parent, it's infuriating that these expert opinions are not being considered. Unfortunately, this is what Upper Dublin administrators did with the music department. Not once did they speak with our amazing music teachers to get their insight, opinions, or suggestions. Instead, they made the decision without knowing the detrimental effects their decision will have. Let Upper Dublin be different from all these other districts that are making mistakes and poor decisions at the expense of their students. Instead, think about what is best for the students and how the teachers can be most impactful. I understand many decisions are based on finances, but there needs to be a mind shift and to start remembering no money is worth saving if our students are not getting what they need and deserve, which includes appropriate teacher placement. Upper Dublin needs to do better, and in this case, particularly for our young musicians. You could easily be putting children's musical flames out by removing Mr. Kennedy from Sandy Run. Thank you.
Thank you.
Geneva Tella Ambler. Upper Dublin strives for the best in academics, athletics, and the arts, but many in our community have become aware of the schedule changes and lack of hiring when it comes to music. Therefore, it doesn't quite seem like we're fully supporting the arts. There are several members on this exact board that have children who have enjoyed and who have thrived in a robust music and arts programs in Upper Dublin, and we feel those of us with students still in these programs deserve the same. We've lost 2 band directors, Mr. Aceta and Mrs. Butekoffer. Neither has been replaced. We have also eliminated a music and arts department head position previously held by Mr. Horn, now replaced by a more generic humanities position that is filled by someone who is not experienced in the music and arts programs in Upper Dublin. No fault of their own, by the way. In addition, with the loss of these two positions, students have also lost small group lessons beyond the full band practice over the past years. It seems appropriate, with a $111 million budget, that we could at least fill one of those 2 positions with a fresh, new, and an enthusiastic band director to work at the elementary level to bolster the program that suffered great losses and an enthusiasm gap during COVID. We could have Mr. Horn work with Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Arnold to bring back the much-needed small group lessons at Sandy Run and keep Mr. Kennedy in the position that he has held for so long. Mr. Kennedy is hardworking, dedicated, and a fun music teacher, band director, and jazz band director. Mr. Kennedy deserves to continue his work with the kids at Sandy Run, for whom he is accustomed. I have even sat through one of his classes. He has a fantastic way of teaching kids music that makes it fun. He finds field trips for the band and jazz band like Dorney Park, the Naval Base, and retirement communities. He brings in the most amazing talent to perform for all the Sandy Run Middle School students in order to spark their interest in music and band. Keith Spencer comes to mind, which ironically I believe Keith is here with us tonight, who, by the way, signed the petition and wrote a fantastic comment, and I encourage you all to read that one. It is amazing. Sean has endured pathetic band rooms at the old cafeteria in the annex and a rifle room in the basement in the main building, and has been used as a general classroom proctor when no subs are available, instead of doing what he's qualified to teach and what he loves, or what our students deserve for the music education. Mr. Kennedy has proven himself dedicated, and he is worthy of maintaining his current position. He deserves our full support, a huge thank you, and our respect for a job well done. Mr. Kennedy should be able to continue his great work at Sandy Run Middle School. Now, on another note, since I have time, it's totally not related, the graduation ceremony, which I attended, even though I didn't have a senior. It seems highly inappropriate to me and very odd to have our board members hand our seniors their diplomas. The board is a volunteer, supposedly nonpartisan position that has become wildly political, and who has very little to do with the day-to-day activities of the students or with them directly. There are at least a dozen more people who would be more appropriate to use for this event, who have actually been with these kids every day for 4 years. Let's say, first and foremost, our principal, and or one of our 3 vice principals, and or the teachers that are the class sponsors, and or the guidance counselors, and or Dr. Yanni, or many more who have much more involvement with the kids' day-to-day activities and their education. It is the staff that knows all the students and should be the ones to hand them the well-deserved diplomas from Upper Dublin High School. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Spencer. I live in Dresher. I'm just going to hold this. Doesn't like the taller people. That's okay. I'll spare everybody the pains of going to go find what I wrote online. I'll just read it to you. I think it's pretty appropriate. Doesn't need much more to be said. With regard to Mr. Kennedy again being removed from his position at Sandy Run Middle School. As a professional performer and current Upper Dublin resident, I credit the mentors and the lessons under my past Upper Dublin teachers for my love and joy of music. So naturally, I was deeply disappointed to hear the administration's decision to remove Sean Kennedy from the Sandy Run Middle School program. Coming up through Upper Dublin system, I took lessons during the school day with my music mentors. In those one-on-one interactions, I built a relationship with teachers who took the time to care for and invest in me. When I then rehearsed and performed with the entire ensemble, I had a level of confidence built on a solid foundation. Times have continued to change, and I know of no greater resource than Sean Kennedy, who has continued to flex with them and help students thrive in music. His masterful investment in media and performance styles makes the Sandy Run Music Program experience unique, and so much more than just going to band. In addition, he's leveraged his professional network connections to bring other performers to Sandy Run to give back to students a bit of what set them on their musical journey. The successful Sandy Run music program Sean has built will be absolutely rocked should you remove him from the middle school. Our middle school students will get less than they deserve with fragmented schedules and split resources. As I spoke to other concerned parents about this change, I was further disappointed to hear that Upper Dublin no longer provides lessons during the school day at Sandy Run. This is despite having qualified teachers willing to do so. Please understand when I state this. As a student coming through Upper Dublin school system, my family may not have prioritized paying for costly private lessons outside school. The fact that I had access to in-school lessons was the sole reason I could freely build on my skill set and then thrive in the ensembles with more confidence. I would have missed out. I question the equity of this decision in comparison to the access provided by neighboring school districts. Net, moving Sean out of the middle school program is more detrimental than you may realize. Our middle school students deserve the quality of program that Sean has built up over 25 years of loyally serving our Upper Dublin kids. I implore the board to consider and continue making this about what is in our children's best interests and rethink this decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need a brister. I hate to touch it. Oh, no choice. Okay. I guess I'll start with, it's on page 19, administrator salaries. I'm going to put this back. I need 2 hands. How's that? Is that good? Thank you. Administrator salaries. I'm not in a position, obviously, to do an evaluation of the administrators. I would be, obviously, the board does that. So I don't want you to think I'm quibbling over the actual increase. What I'm confused about is it's inconsistent with last year. Okay, and Dr. Yanni, I'm sure you recall that I sent an email to you, to Mr. Leckman, and I copied a couple of board members on maybe, it was a series of emails about the language that was in the June 2021 board agenda. So anyway, for those who maybe don't know, that language was last year, 2021, the Act 93 administrators were getting a raise of 2.09%. And there was, this is the specific language from last year's board agenda. It was recommended that an increase in the amount of the tax increase, but not less than 1.99% for Dr. Yanni, Mr. Leckman, Ms. Kitten. So last year's tax increase was 2.47%, and that certainly left the impression that the three, call them top administrators, we're getting 2.47%. So my concern last year was, why would there ever be language tying a top administrator's contract to the tax increase? Because the board is supposed to be representing the taxpayers and try to be fiscally responsible, and that seemed like I'm not saying it's an actual conflict of interest, I'm saying that kind of language could leave the door open to a potential conflict of interest. So anyway, that was last year, and then this year, page 19, it looks like the whole group, so Act 93, which is principals, assistant principals, and Dr. Yanni, Mr. Leckman, and Ms. Kitten, that overall group is getting 2.8%. Again, I'm not quibbling with the 2.8%, but it's inconsistent because last year it basically said that the superintendent and the top three would get the amount, their increase would be in the amount of the tax increase, but never less than or not less than 1.99. So obviously, now that we're going for a 2% tax increase, which is certainly better than 2.3, you're going above that. I'm confused about last year's language versus this year's language. Okay. The support staff contract, just wondering if, I know you're going to give some information after this meeting. I'm wondering if either tonight or in that information, can you give, I ask this for every contract, so you might as well just know that. What's the overall, I like to know the overall amount of new money, meaning you've got an old contract, now you're going to start a new contract, is a 5-year contract. What's the overall amount approximately? Is it $1 million a year, $2 million a year? What's that contract, the new raises cost over the life of the contract? And the only other thing I wanted to say is, Mark, and I've probably said this before, but you're going to have to put up with it. To say that it's low, that this year's increase is low by any standard, I just can't agree, and that's because I've lived here a long time. Yeah, it might be, I don't know yet, maybe you have info. I don't know what Wissahickon, Springfield, Happer, Horsham, I don't know all their increases yet. We'll know very soon, okay? But you're looking at a 1-year increase. I'm always looking at a multi-year. I'm looking at the 2% on top of all the other years. And we have to realize, for people like me that have history, yeah, it's great. I'm thrilled that you're below the Act 1 index, but we had at least 10 years of being above the Act 1. And it's not just related, it's not just the high school,
Ms. Brister, if you
by any
can
means.
wrap it up, your 4 minutes. is
Okay,
up.
I'll wrap it up. My point is, I think a board member should be looking at the whole chart that Andy provides, because that's what the tax increase is on top of. So we have a high base amount, and you kind of never point that out.
Thank you.
My name's Asher Sutton. I'm from Drescher. I'm a former student of Mr. Kennedy's, and I also support him keeping his role as the band director at the middle school. I actually did not attend Upper Dublin throughout my high school career. He was my marching band director at Wissahickon. I've seen the impact that he's had on the students at Upper Dublin because we very frequently interacted with the marching band, and all of them had gone through Mr. Kennedy's teachings. And I personally think it's very detrimental to these students to mess with the dynamic that they've become accustomed to. I've seen that happen in my own middle school, and my grade went from 100 participants in our middle school band to 20, I think it was around 25, when we had a change in directors very abruptly. I just personally think that he should be able to keep his position after being so dedicated and so impactful on so many students.
Again, before speaking, please state your name and where you reside in the township.
Hi, Dr. Yanni, Board of Directors. I'm David Liu. I'm from Maple Glen. It's no secret that my relation with Sean Kennedy and Chris Horn is very tight. They are great mentors to me. I grew up with Mrs. Sharpier's daughter, Mika. We went through orchestra together. Dr. Levinowitz has collaborated with the jazz band for many occasions during my time. And I'm really heartbroken by this decision that has been made to not only displace Mr. Kennedy from the job that he's been doing and that you've been hearing all night, but for Chris Horn to also suffer secondary repercussions from this. So to rehash everything, Sean has built this program up in the middle school for over a quarter of a century, and his band numbers at their apex have exceeded over 100 students. Chris Horn, in the past few years, has also undergone some personal compromises due to his second-born having Down syndrome. We all know he recently resigned from his position with the Marching Cardinals so that he could hope to spend more time with his child, but unfortunately, he was forced to teach at Maple Glen as well to fulfill missing credits in his schedule and a staffing shortage. Since Joe Acetta's retirement, and since Rose Butekoffer's retirement, we've seen this position go empty, and this is not the first time. Randy Baldwin, May Huang, and teachers in other departments have also received similar treatment without their own consent. The big theme that we're sort of going about on with tonight is lessons, and that they've been cut from the curriculum in the past 3 to 4 years. And this truly creates a socioeconomic disparity for all the students. Upper Dublin serves a wide demographic of families from varying income levels and does their best to support them in any way they can. But in here, they've fallen short by quite a bit. I've been given many excuses as to why Sean's been removed, that he'll thrive at the elementary school, that this will save the budget, this will help enrollment, that he doesn't have a certification to teach yearbook. And I just have to say that while this may increase enrollment in the short term, in the long term, you are putting these students with one teacher for 8 or even 9 years in the case of the class of 2029. And while this is good for some kids, this is not good for all kids. Children need to interact with a variety of teachers to get a variety of perspectives, learn how to develop in all different sorts of ways, learn different teaching styles, to find their own mentor, rather than be shoved one teacher for 8 years, as have the students of the music department. Many districts also run lessons, and for some reason, their taxes are much lower. I've had a seasonal contract with a neighboring school district in this area. They have lower taxes, but they've managed to still find room in the budget to keep lessons in the curriculum. So the question is, why is Upper Dublin having a problem? So really quickly, I would say that solutions would be, number one, obviously, put lessons back in the curriculum. This will prevent parents from dropping their kids out of band and orchestra and chorus because they can't afford private lessons otherwise. Secondly, move ensembles such as the jazz band into the curriculum, into the school day. This will fulfill Chris Horn's missing teaching credit. This also provides a very specialized outlet for students who want to focus on jazz, future Dr. Levinowitzes and such. Thirdly, this will allow Chris to leave school on time to spend time with his child with special needs. The final proposition I have is to make symphony orchestra a co-led course between Ms. Christine Yang and either Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Horn, because in other districts, students have instrumental specialists that help them to facilitate these sorts of lessons, and thus with Chris or Sean fulfilling that side of the symphony orchestra, you should have no problem keeping all the teacher schedules full and finding room in the budget to hopefully hire an elementary school teacher to fulfill that 3 to 4 year hole in our program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I live in Dresher. A big part of the reason I chose to bring my family, raise my family in Upper Dublin was its reputation for its music and arts program. And the direction that I'm seeing this program go in is to disappear, particularly the music program. My middle school was a difficult time. I watched my 6th grader really struggle this year to find her place, and she found it in band, and she found it in Mr. Kennedy. Without lessons, I absolutely agree 100% this is an equity issue to not have lessons for the kids. But if you don't have lessons, you're not going to have a band. You're not going to have kids who know how to play musical instruments, and you're not going to have that safe haven for the kids that they need. We had an excellent experience in elementary school, and we're having an amazing experience in middle school with Mr. Kennedy there. If he's gone and Mr. Horn is stretched even thinner, I cannot imagine that this program will manage to sustain itself, which would be a tremendous loss for the township and for the kids. They deserve a strong program, and they need a strong program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Christine Yang. I live in Fort Washington. I am the orchestra teacher at Sandy Run Middle School and Upper Dublin High School, but I'm speaking today as an alumni of the music programs here and also a parent of a student who attends Fort Washington Elementary School. Just to clarify one point, because many people have spoken before me very well about the equity issue regarding lessons, but the move of Mr. Kennedy to the elementary schools will make it impossible for lessons to be provided for band at the middle school level, and also, as a consequence, impossible for orchestra lessons to be provided at the middle school level. I taught for 7 years before coming to Upper Dublin in the school district of Philadelphia, so equity is an issue that's very important to me. And in making this move to Upper Dublin, when I think about my teaching philosophy, I think that my goal is, yes, to have an amazing ensemble, to have them have very high-level experiences, but also mostly, above all, to reach the students that without me, without the Upper Dublin School District, would have a good musical experience, that wouldn't have the influence at home or through private outside lessons to have that experience. And I'm afraid that with the direction that the program has gone since I graduated in 2010, that dream would no longer be possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Yanni. I'm Jessica Pitt, Dr. Ortiz. I am the person who actually started the survey to try and preserve Sean Kennedy in his role. I was amazed by the outpouring of community support for this long-standing educator. I mean, I thought maybe I'd get 50 hits. Maybe I'd get 100. I got 150 in a day. I got 950 by this morning. And if this doesn't speak to what music means to these people who've gathered here, to what it means to our children, and then how not only is it limited to strictly the band, that is such a myopic perspective, because the skills that you learn, discipline, math, and overall IQ totally have a ripple effect on our children's dedication, on our understanding of perseverance, of teamwork, of collaboration. There are so many other functions that come about as a result of our children being involved in music. And for you to take someone who has started a program, who has exposed all these people and brought them up to just develop careers that are musically inclined, as well as then be professional performers just totally takes an avenue off the table that is definitely where some kids, like my kid, are probably going to go. And so you're not doing this with math. I'm a science person. I'm a pharmacist. My husband's a physician, but this is not our kid. You know, I can't press that circle into a square peg into a circle. And to miss the opportunity to give him what he really needs because you're pulling resources away would be a real tragedy. And so I, like many of the other guests here, request that you reconsider that. We've heard $100 million budget. We've heard, raise increases, and, to your credit, they are actually less than the price of inflation, but they're important. And so when we look at an educator that gets this kind of response, I want each and every one of us in this room to think, in 2 weeks' time, would 1,000 people who you've interacted with, either as a mentor or as a colleague, come to you and actually come and sign a petition on your behalf and write comments because you're awesome?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Chippendale. I live in Ambler. My son is a rising senior, and he has been in the band program since we moved to Upper Dublin in 4th grade. And a lot of really great things have been said tonight, and I don't need to reiterate all of them, but I just want to add my voice to the call to please fully staff the band program. My son saw Mr. Horn's schedule being really impacted by the fact that he had to run to the elementary level. Jazz band was severely impacted. Their jazz band rehearsals were cut short. They had to be canceled at times. He also saw those lessons being eliminated. He had lessons in 6th grade, and then they were eliminated. And now, as he is going into his senior year, he's seeing that the students who are coming up do not have the skills that they need to perform at the high school level. And the numbers, I believe, were shrinking in band before the pandemic. And if kids don't have the skills that they need to play the music, they're going to stop playing. And if you want to be able to field the marching band, if you want to keep this good high school program that we've had with a great orchestra program, great band program, you need those lessons at the middle level. So I also call for, please hire an elementary teacher, someone with expertise with kids at that level. Let Mr. Kennedy stay where he has the expertise. He's a professional drummer. He has incredible skills. He has great knowledge of jazz. That knowledge is just not going to get used if he's at the elementary level and can't run that middle school jazz program. I am an orchestra teacher for a neighboring district, a district that is not as well resourced as this district, and we have a very strong middle school pull-out lesson program there. And I tell you from personal experience, it's incredibly important for the kids. They need those lessons at the middle level to build the skills that they need for high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to request, my name is Nick Croce, and I'd like to request permission to speak, as I was a resident here for 15 years and recently moved to Yardley. So I came back. Do I have your permission?
Unfortunately, our policy requires, school district policy requires a person to be a resident in order to
Okay,
speak.
then all I'll say is doing
could-
it to
but-
Sean Kennedy
but-
is a mistake.
But, sir, if you could please put your comments in writing, and you can send them in so that we would have them documented. Okay, seeing no one else approaching the mic, I am going to close community comments. I did not see any comments that were submitted. So did any more come in? Okay. So we will close community input at this time. Let me just begin by saying that the school board does not make placement decisions. That truly is the responsibility of the administration. As a school board, we certainly appreciate hearing all the comments that were made because they do enlighten us as well. And then we have some board members, as some have indicated, that have had children that participated, you know, in the music program. Even though I didn't grow up in Upper Dublin, I grew up in the North Penn Marching Band. And so, you know, many of us understand the importance of music education. But as a board, we do not make placement decisions in terms of teachers, educational assistants, bus drivers, any of those people in our school district. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Yanni for a response.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Before I speak specifically about Mr. Kennedy and his role at the middle school, I do want to correct a few things that were said. So this year, well, let me start with 2 years ago. The district decided that we were no longer going to have the supervisory structure that we once had. And so a number of our supervisors that spent part of their day teaching and part of their days acting as a supervisor, those positions went away. We had one for fine arts, we had one for English, we had one for math, for science and social studies. And the reason that that went away is because you really can't live in two worlds. It was an Upper Dublin anomaly, and it's really difficult to be someone's colleague, period 1 and 2, and to be their boss the rest of the day. So the comment that somehow that was a signal of us not supporting the arts, that really had nothing to do with supporting the arts or not. That had to do with the supervisory structure that was changed. This year, the school year that just ended, Mr. Horn was teaching at the high school and supporting the elementary. Living in both worlds on two fundamentally different schedules created a lot of gridlock. When we talked, or when someone mentioned about putting jazz band into the curriculum, it is in the curriculum at the middle school. It's not. There's an extra duty contract. So that's an extra duty stipend to do that work after the school day. So there was a decision I'm looking, I think it was 2 years ago, probably before Dr. Ortiz was at the middle school, to not do jazz band after school, but to do it during the school day. There were also some comments about the administration making decisions haphazardly, not caring about the arts. When we look at our entire process of staffing, we sit down with our principals and we look at students' needs and enrollment. So there was thought put into it, and there might be times that we're going to agree to disagree on the amount of thought or the quality of thought, but it does need to be stated that there was thought. There's thought that goes into every staffing decision. There was also a comment made that music teachers were pulled to sub. Music teachers have been pulled to sub, reading specialists have been pulled to sub, special ed teachers have been pulled to sub. There's no secret that this year there was a sub shortage and an issue not just here in Upper Dublin, but all over. And so to the extent possible, we tried not to pull those folks, but there were times that we definitely had to pull those folks. So there was also another comment that we don't care about the art. So I'm going to read you the list of courses that we're running this year that are below the class size guideline, which means these classes by our previous practice haven't run. Advanced 2D art and advanced 3D art, advanced photo and intermediate photography, speech and debate, child development 2 and 3, I know that's not art, Guitar 2 half-year course and Guitar 2 full-year course, music industry, music theory and AP music theory, honors band at the high school, honors chorus at the high school, Looking down, advanced TV production and advanced film production, acting for the screen, children's theater, and yearbook. So I bring those up to say, I'm not trying, well, I guess in a way I am defending that we don't care about the arts, because it would be easy for us just not to run those programs, right? Or to not run those courses. Not running some of those courses would mean that subsequent courses would also not run, particularly in the area of theater. If we didn't run the theater courses for next year, we would cease to have a theater program. We are still looking at schedules. This year, Mr. Matakovic at the elementary level supported basically 3 of our elementary buildings, and Mr. Horn supported 1. There was a comment that we didn't replace Rosemary Butekoffer, and we didn't, because when you looked at the way Chris Horn's schedule changed, we were filling that gap internally because he was no longer going to act as a supervisor. We also looked at numbers, and I know that when we talk about the arts and we talk about special programs, it draws a lot of passion, but we look at students' needs and students' numbers. I can't sit here right now and tell you that Sean Kennedy is going to be definitely not at the middle school next year. I can't tell you that he's definitely going to be there. We are going to continue to look at schedules. There is a desire to bring back the lessons, as were mentioned. I think there is an incredible opportunity with that, given the way that our new schedules set up, particularly the way the high school schedule frees up and allows for some movement. We're also going to look at the way we do lessons at the elementary level. There was some, and this is not a commentary on the professionalism of our music teachers, but there was some inefficiency. We allowed some of our classroom teachers to dictate too much when kids could get pulled for music lessons. So we're looking at a rotating schedule next year that will be better for kids and create some efficiency. So I anticipate, as we continue to work with our principals and we continue to look at schedules, that the landscape may change a little bit. But sitting here right now, you hear it directly from me that our goal is to put those lessons back in. As I said, jazz band is at the middle school it is in the schedule, so it is part of the curriculum. So the major change for next year is, instead of Chris Horn being at the high school and one of the elementaries, he would be, right now as it stands, at the high school and middle school. And then Sean Kennedy would support 2 of our elementary buildings, and Matt Matakovic would support one of our other buildings. I'm not sure where, there's been a rumor that there is a music teacher retiring this year, and that's why we're doing that. There is no music teacher retiring this year. I've also heard that it's because we're making this change because Mr. Kennedy is not certified to teach yearbook. Mr. Horn has been teaching a number of music classes at the high school, and he'll continue to teach some of those courses at the high school, whether he's supporting high school and middle school or high school and elementary. And then I want to end my comments here by saying, I don't want anyone to think, and we might have to agree to disagree, because some of you I know are looking at this as disrespect for Mr. Kennedy. This is not disrespect for Mr. Kennedy. Staffing decisions, as Dr. Davis said, are the work of administration. We take input from our principals. We take a look at schedules. We're not doing this. There's no ulterior motive. There's nothing wrong with Mr. Kennedy's instruction. What I will say is we will continue to be nimble with the music department, just like we've been nimble with other departments. This year, we've had to add a staff member in the high school art department because enrollment went up. As the landscape changes with programs, we expand and constrict. And I know that's hard for some people to hear, but that's the reality of where we are right now. In terms of some of the comments around the budget, so in full transparency, my contract calls for a salary increase of no less than 1% and no more than 5%. I can tell you that I've never taken anywhere near 5% since I've been here. The last couple of years, we have used the tax increase as a measure or something to align salary increases to. And there was some commentary last year that even though this was not said about me, but that could mean a superintendent at some point could push the board for a higher tax increase to take a higher salary increase. So last year, the salary increase was 2.47. Full disclosure, I took 2%. I didn't take the 2.47. To avoid any of those, potential conflicts or even the perception of conflict this year, it was the decision to look at our entire Act 93 leadership team, Ashley Kitten, our Director of Human Resources, and our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Leckman, and group all of the administrators together. So the inconsistency that you're seeing is what will be the new consistency moving forward. We have tried to keep our salary increases over the last couple of years in line with making sure that we remain competitive. We have to compete not only with Montgomery County districts, but Bucks County districts. So we want to make sure that we keep our salaries competitive. We want to make sure that our folks are being paid appropriately, and all administrator salary increases, they're not guaranteed. So there's nothing in the Act 93 agreement that says that any administrator has to get an increase. So increases are based upon the administrator's goals during the year and their progress toward those goals. And it is correct, 2.8% is the average. There are some people that we needed to do some salary correction for, because there were some folks that were underpaid. And then there are some folks that are getting small increases because when we look at like positions across the county, they're paid on the higher end. So again, a lot of thought goes into that, and that was what was approved this evening.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Ms. Evans.
So as Dr. Davis mentioned, and Dr. Yanni, the board is not responsible for making staffing decisions. That being said, I just want to reassure the community there's a lot of support on this board for the arts. I know many people on this board either have or had children who went through the program. I've got 3 kids in the program, one going into the middle school, one who's just leaving the middle school. So I just want to, reassure the community that the arts are very important to me, and not to speak for the other members of the board, but I know are important to them as well.
Any other comments from the board? Okay. Thank you. Let me just mention our upcoming meetings. We have on August 17th, a Finance Committee meeting. Also on August 17th at 7, or immediately following the 6 o'clock Finance Committee, we have a Policy Committee meeting. And then on Monday, August 22nd at 7 p.m., we have our legislative meeting. Again, before I adjourn, any last comments from any of the board members? Okay, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.